Welcome everyone to another episode of BizzTalk Africa. I'm your host Jason Schuster, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host Vidya Mike from Questus Solutions. And with us today we have Adrian Mill. I'm really excited to talk to Adrian today on just a really cool subject. Adrian's joining us as the managing director of ESS. And we're going to be talking about sustainability in Sub-Saharan Africa. Welcome to the show, Adrian. Really glad to have you. Could you take a few minutes and tell the audience a little bit about yourself, kind of your background, and maybe a little bit about what you guys are doing at ESS?
Yeah, sure. So I've got over 20 years of experience in the environmental and social sector. I've done lots of different things in that. I've been a volunteer, I've been academic, I've been a consultant, I've been a health, safety, environment, communities manager, and now a business owner as well. I've got a lot of experience in the field. ESS was born from a desire during my experience in living in Africa. So I've emigrated to Senegal 11 years ago and have been based here since. And so, here with my family, obviously, and trying to support Africa. And I say Africa, Africa's the size of 5 Chinas. So it's not the best word to use, but it does cover the continent. But certainly in the countries where we're working across Africa, which is quite widely, we have a lot of, there's a lot to be done, basically. There's a lot of work to be done, and we're supporting companies and investors in implementing international standards in a context which is quite difficult. Often very limited infrastructure, very limited resources, very limited energy, limited capacities. And one of the things that I came across during my time here in Africa is that, a lot of the big, let's call it consultancies and different, companies in the environmental and social sector are disincentivized to really invest in Africa and invest in people, because those people can, simply wander off and become competitors. And so I didn't want to become a competitor. I wanted, there's people and there's expertise here in Africa. What Africa doesn't need is more white people coming and saying what to do. It needs people who want to move here and become part of the success story, and also who want to work in tandem with Africans, whatever and whoever they are, in delivering results. And for us, the most important thing is delivering results in terms of leaving an environment and a social environment and a biodiversity and a physical environment that we can be proud to leave to our children. So that's how ESS was born, really. I often make sure I clarify what we mean by ESS. ESS is environmental and social sustainability. So that we do what it says on the tin. We provide services. It's quite a unique niche that we provide services in that we don't do environmental studies per se, environmental and social studies. Most people in the field would know of the EIA or ESIA, which is environmental and social impact assessment. These are permitting documents, compliance documents, but we're more interested in actual implementation. So really for us, the key is how do we get it done? Because everything's already written down and most of the stuff we can figure out. Now it has to happen. Otherwise, you look out the door in most parts of Africa and it's not very clean. The buildings are not up to scratch. The construction codes are not being followed, etc. And we got to avoid that, and that's what we're trying to address. And so ESS works in, go on, sorry.
This is really good though, Adrian, because you sort of get in now at the beginning of some of the big programs and projects that's happening. I mean, if you take a look at what happens, like in Brazil, for example, or other places where people complain about destroying of the rainforest, the issue you have there is that cities had to form, right? And now people need to live because they didn't probably have the ESG awareness. You had beautiful nature being destroyed because people still need to live and infrastructure needs to happen. I think what you're doing here is being able to harness your knowledge, your network, and your skills to ensure that, you know, these projects that need to move forward to bring Africa to the next level is happening in a harmonious manner with from an environmental and people perspective and all of that, right? So you sort of, you know, making sure you close that gap. And it's not going to be something you're going to look at 40 years and think, oh, we need to go back, because it's very difficult to go back. But if you do it intelligently, you move forward in a better manner.
Exactly. I mean, you know, obviously ESS is more than just myself. I'm very grateful and blessed to be surrounded by mostly African experts, you know, in the countries where they're working. That's kind of our selling point, is that everyone's in the country where they're working, so they can, you know, they know the local context, they understand, you know, they've got the contacts to be able to get things done, etc. But yeah, I think what you say is correct. I mean, at the end of the day, biodiversity and the planet, there's only one planet, there's only one set of biodiversity. It'll take millions of years for us to get it back.
Yes.
There is a way for us to fix these things, to do things rather, in a way that don't require fixing, in a way that's harmonious.
It's harmonious, exactly.
Harmonious with society, harmonious with the environment. You know, a lot of damage has already been done. And in fact, you know, as I say to many of our clients, we can benefit from that. It's done already. We can't undo it. We focus on these areas which are already impacted, and we turn them either back to what they were before, slowly, but we also benefit for, you know, for society. It's you know, there's no such thing as a green hippie tree hugger. You know, everyone knows we have to eat. Everyone has a phone. You know, everyone knows that the phone comes from the ground and plastics and so forth. No, you can't get around it. So we're all very realistic. But on the flip side, what's important is that businesses integrate sustainability into their business model.
Absolutely.
So
now, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
How have you seen? Oh, I'm sorry, Jason. Oh my God. Oh, what can I say? I have to apologize before I get started. But how have you seen like ESG, you know, evolve? Because you've been there for a long time. Where you started to where you are now, how has awareness changed with companies coming in? Do they think of ESG as, oh, you know what, we need to tick our boxes because the investors are going to look for it? Or are they like, you know what, we are really concerned, we want this to be right, and ESG is now part of our DNA and how we approach projects? Is that what you're seeing?
Well, I think there's been a huge amount of steps in the last 5 years towards ESG. So let me define ESG and sustainability, because
Yes,
believe it or not,
you.
even, I mean, this whole sector exists. I mean, it's existed for, you know, let's say 60 years, but in reality, as a discipline, it's really only existed for around 20. I mean, right. I come from Australia, and I was, you know, at my university, it was the first time that such a course had been offered. So, you know, it's only in the last 20 years we've really seen the issues have come together in a cohesive way. But ESG and sustainability are two separate but very related things. So ESG is about compliance. So compliance and risk management. So basically, how do we manage a risk, and how do we make sure that we tick the boxes? Put very simply, if I get ESG wrong, I could go to jail. Okay, so if I go over a standard, big trouble. The flip side is when we talk about sustainability. Sustainability is about aspiration. How can we change the business model? How can we adopt different approaches and different ways? How can we take into account nature-based solutions, etc., and leverage those to do the things that humans want to do, because we've got to work within a human society, obviously. And so that's sustainability. No one's gone to jail because a CO2 emissions target was missed, right? No one goes to jail because they didn't contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. So they're related, but they're not the same. All right. Now, obviously, sustainability is becoming a big thing, and in fact, sustainability is obviously the more important of the two, because it's not enough to just tick boxes. Okay?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I give an example of mining, right? Mines use a lot of water sometimes. So if you're using a lot of water, then you're having impacts on the environment, which needs water to, you know, keep animals and plants healthy, and people who need it to drink and live. and of course other users of that water if it's in an area, and in dry areas obviously it becomes very critical that we're not overusing water resources. But what if you could make a mine that doesn't use any water? So that's sustainability, essentially. It's changing the way you do something, and that can be more expensive, obviously, but then you get rid of the impact. And by designing your company and your activities correctly, you can avoid 95% of the issues, and then the 5-10% of issues which are really problematic, then you can start digging into them and come up to solution, with creative ways of dealing with them.
Jason, you know what's interesting about this? I have had the pleasure of working with Adrian before, and he practices what he preaches, and he does do this, and he does not hold back in actually saying, like, yes, we know cost is important, but if you look at it this way, and I think, that sort of approach is refreshing, quite frankly, because if you do things in hindsight, so clean things up later on, people don't factor that into the ROI when they're actually looking at, a project. But actually, the impact on the environment is a cost that should be considered alongside when you're actually assessing the value and the effectiveness of your project. Because whilst the project may not have to pay for it, people do, governments do, and it's not actually, it doesn't feature, but it really should do. And while things are more expensive,
Yeah. No, to add to that, I mean, obviously there's a lot to be done in terms of how to manage these issues, and I think investors really are leading the charge in this, and we're seeing every day front page news about how BlackRock's now thinking about ESG, and all these big names and investment are really focused on it. And I mean, ESS has the big luck of being able to be in the right place at the right time during a period when there's massive attention being put onto this. So we've been very, very lucky in that in many respects. But I think at the end of the day, again, the ESG issues is about investors just want to get their money back, right?
Right.
And if society, in fact, there's a terminology for what you were describing before. It's called the triple bottom line, right? Because society has to pay for it.
Write this down.
And investors have to live in that society as well. And investors have kids. They don't want the environment to be destroyed. There's very few things. I mean, a lot of people like these conspiracy theories of the evil corporation, right? But corporations are run by people like you and me and Jason, who who have hopes and dreams, and they don't want to have life contribute to a worse planet. So if you give the choice to people, they'll make the right decisions. But the reality is, if you have a bad project or a bad company or a bad set of activities, right? You can't, as the expression goes, put lipstick on a pig. If it's bad, sorry guys, you got to throw it away or turn it around. It's as simple as that. And the number of times I'm asked to save projects, they're like, oh, but it's in a national park. It's great otherwise. I'm like, well, what on earth made you think that building a mine or whatever in the national park was a good idea in the first place? That should have been a massive red flag. No, but we thought we could deal with it. And it's like, hang on a second. No, you can't deal with it. You're dead duck in the water. You can't move. It's and I always refuse these projects, and we're very lucky at ESS because we only get companies come in who understand that they really need to take that they want to build sustainability into their business model. So we're very lucky in that regard.
Now I have a question real quick, and this is just popped up. You mentioned bad projects are they're still bad even if it's lipstick on a pig. That hypothetical, what are some of the common pigs that you see that people are trying to put lipstick on?
Oh, there's no one sector which is the worst, right? It's in everything. I mean, it's people often, I talk about mining quite a lot because mining really takes society's imagination. And people cry about mining all the time. They're, oh, how horrible it is. And in Europe, it's the worst because Europeans, they don't like having mines in Europe either, right? But all your telephone and so forth, all this comes from, other countries. And why not Europe? It's this NIMBY mentality, not in my backyard mentality, which contributes to that. But at the end of the day, you want a phone, you want to have this conversation. We can't go back to caves, right? We have to work in the real world. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be looking for better solutions. Plastics can be done with biofuels. We can use other, we can use other methodologies to produce things and massively improve on the way we recycle things and the circularity of our businesses, and to ensure that these issues can go away, can be managed. It's the desire has to be there. I mean, oil and gas is another one that gets maligned, and to be fair, there's a good reason for that. But I often tell people, and I sometimes I get accused that I'm a bit of I'm a strange environmentalist if I say this, but I often tell people, if there was no CO2 issue, if CO2 emissions went away, would people stop using fossil fuels? We're only stopping fusing them because it's contributing to global climate change. And so, we would actually probably go back to them, I mean, until they ran out. And actually, as long as you deal with the issues associated with extraction and pollution associated with it, what's wrong with that? I mean, it's a resource there, it's finite. But so I'm not saying it's good to go and get oil and gas. Obviously, there's way better solutions that can be developed and have been developed. But what I am saying is, it needs to be done in a thoughtful way, a joined up way. The best solution is circular always. And as long as we take into account, that's the sustainability side of things. And then when you're actually doing whatever it is you're doing, making sure that you're meeting you're applying those international standards, especially in the I'm talking about emerging economies primarily here now, because these emerging economies don't have the luxury of the West. They're not rich. They don't have all the resources. Sorry, they may have all the resources, but they don't have them out of the ground, and they haven't benefited them for hundreds of years. So, some countries in emerging economies, they only have the option of using coal or oil and gas. And,
Right.
frankly, the rest of society, Western society benefited for hundreds of years. Why can't they for a while? It's a transition. And what's fair and what's not fair, I mean, this is bigger conversations maybe, but it does fall into this whole discussion.
Adrian, I agree with you. You are a bit of a strange environmentalist. In a good way.
A realist.
Yeah.
Let's say a realist, right?
Exactly.
Because, I mean, it's, we all want to hug trees and, and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's a trade-off, right? Because in some of these countries, the poverty and the suffering of people is immense. And unless there are intelligent ways in how we protect people, as companies go in and try and put infrastructure in place, utilize, do the mining and stuff like that, we do need to make sure that we protect people. And protection of people is not only protection of the planet, it is the whole ecosystem surrounding it. It's about education. It's about, simple things like clean water. Even if we have to use fossil fuel to get energy, to be able to educate these kids for whatever reason, I mean, it's back to that circular beneficial analysis that Adrian is talking about, right? I mean, everything has to be taken in context and not out of context, because that's when you really can't assess the impact of something.
Yeah. Well, Adrian, sustainability, sorry, just to add to that, sustainability doesn't mean that, I mean, obviously there are things we can do which avoid locking in. The problem of all these things is locking in bad behavior. So if I build bad behavior, bad environmental behaviors, let's call it, or bad things that will have impacts on the environment, society. So if I build a coal power station, in theory, I want to be using that for 20, 30 years. So,
right.
Why build that station? If we can build, renewables, and, don't forget renewables are made out of resources as well. So someone's got to mine those resources and create those things. There's manufacturing. It might be done in China. China's got lots of coal power plants. It's not like we're just moving the things around in that instance to some degree. But of course, once we get out of that sort of pit and we're using those renewable energies and those better processes, well, then we're starting to head towards a truly sustainable society. And I guess at the end of the day, there's no end goal. We are now sustainable. Everyone, put your pens down. It's it's a continuous effort. There's no final point here, because don't forget, and this is one thing I always remind people: the economy sits within society, right? Without society, there is no economy, right?
Right.
Frogs don't exchange shells and coins, right? But above that, without the environment, there is no society and there's no economy. So we often put society first. We say society is the most important thing, but there's only one planet, and when it's gone wrong, we got no other options. Even if you listen to Elon Musk, he's not telling us we're going to go to Mars and live on a tropical paradise world. It's well, some people like tropical paradises, others like cold paradises. But anyway, I'm in Senegal, so I like a tropical one. But I think you get my meaning. At the end of the day, if we take away what little resources we have left in terms of that old growth forest and those, you know, those biodiversity, the biodiversity in the deep sea and so forth, if we destroy all of them, you can't get it back quickly. And you know, you can get it back, but it takes thousands, tens of thousands, maybe millions of years to get it back, you know. So for humans, that's not quick enough.
Adrian, what is a trend right now in sustainability? So, you know, we had solar, we have wind farm. What is the trend right now? So some of the gaps that you're seeing is obviously energy. Water must absolutely be an issue. What about in terms of connectivity and how we actually get people connected? Because education and awareness is such a key aspect as well.
Yeah.
What are the trends you're seeing, and how is sustainability impacting those trends?
Yeah, I mean, trend. I guess it's one of my passions as well, and I've talked about this at the beginning. Is about, you know, capacity building and being able to deliver these things in emerging economies, because, you know, the reality is that the resources aren't entirely here yet, and there's training and education required. And as I mentioned, getting that education done in this context is hard. And technology obviously is part of that, and connectivity and so forth. I mean, clearly over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, we've seen a massive improvement. Everyone has a phone, you know, even the grandma who lives in the shack across the street from us has a phone and can call up, you know, her kids in Guinea. Yeah, exactly. Well, there's no Amazon here yet, but it's coming.
Oh,
right? We have another one called Jumia. Anyway, I'm plugging them wildly. But so, you know, the things are arriving. It's coming. I mean, obviously things are improving, but things take time. And obviously, what we want to do is get it done as quickly as possible, so that we're addressing those issues. Because, you know, as wonderful a country as Senegal is, it has issues, as does every country. But the issues in Sub-Saharan Africa are obviously quite more stressed, if you like, or augmented than you would expect in other places in the world. And so, you know, what we're seeing is a lot more, you know, investment and thought being put into, you know, African solutions for African problems, for example, talking about Africa, but in general, you know, local rather than global, etc. And there's a mixture. There's obviously a mixture of how that works and what's suitable or not for a particular sector. I mean, one of the things we're noticing a lot of is agribusiness moving into more sustainable, you know, more sustainable production processes, regenerative agriculture, sustainable agriculture. Although how you define that is still a little bit up for grabs. You know, some of certainly from an emerging markets perspective, we're talking about things like, you know, having, you know, using the most simple and cost-effective approaches in terms of getting projects done, you know, and taking into account local context and so forth. Companies are starting to understand these issues and try and implement them. So, I mean, just to provide a quick example, I mean, I'm part of a consortium that's working with the FCDO, Foreign Commonwealth Development Office of the UK, on green manufacturing. It's called Manufacturing Africa Program, MA. And so, you know, we're supporting MA in terms of how to join the dots, because companies in emerging markets don't understand what international investors want, and international investors can't find companies that meet their criteria for investment. So there's a gap here. And, you know, Manufacturing Africa is one of these few sort of state-led approaches which has been really successful. And, you know, and again, we talk about ESG and sustainability because they need to be addressed separately, because there's your activities now in terms of, are you breaking the law? And then there's, can we do it so your activities are much, much better? And so, right, you know, it's been a wonderful experience in terms of, you know, contributing to this program, which, you know, is continuing to be funded rather by the government, despite the obvious COVID impacts. I mean, it's one of the few programs that's been renewed even. So we've been very, very lucky to be involved and with a team who's very committed to, and it's not, obviously it's not just the environmental and social and governance and sustainability issues, it's also about having a good business plan, feasibility studies, market assessments, etc.
I think we might have lost Adrian for a second here.
I think we have. But, you know, Jason, it's really interesting what he's saying. I think one of the questions I have is, you know, we talk about all these big companies, right? But when we look at like what he was talking about in terms of sustainability and how we sort of deal with it, it's for small companies, it's for consumers, it's for large companies. And it's really interesting to see how we could all, you know, work together to make sure that our projects, you know, have the ESG standards. And it's sort of, I think he's trying to come back in, but also sustainable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Adrian, welcome back. We lost you for a second there.
So what can I say? Senegal, Africa, we get power cuts. one of the problems. So yeah, I'm
as
living
if
the
to
dream.
prove your point, it happened, right?
That's right. That's right.
It's not. I mean, we very rarely have power cuts in this part of Dakar, to be fair. So I must admit, when I came here 11 years ago, you know, there was more no power than power, but now it's the opposite. We've got a lot, you know, fairly regular power, and then it comes back. So
now it's
anyway,
back. Now it's back.
That
Okay.
was a small one.
So I had we have just a couple more minutes here, and I'm glad you brought up investors, because investors are a big topic that we've had on this show in multiple different contexts, because there are a lot of people who want to invest in Africa. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of growing economies in Africa. In fact, we're going to have a show here coming up soon about whether or not, talking about Africa as a tech hub. But investors are looking for, you know, not just, at least in today's world, they're not just looking for return on investment. There are a lot of investors that are looking to just make an impact investing. And so I feel like that there's a lot of that opportunity in Africa. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Would you say that, and obviously Africa is a big place, lots of countries, but in your experience, would you say that Africa is ahead of the game on a focus on sustainability, or you know, where are they at when it comes to outside investment and that sustainability mindset on new projects?
Yeah, look, I mean, let's be realistic. Africa is way behind the game, and it's obvious why. But that doesn't mean that it can't leapfrog ahead. And I think, you know, obviously Western countries have a head start and have strong legislative frameworks to make sure that people are meeting standards and so forth. You know, from an investment perspective, you know, as you say, there's many impact investors. Although let's be very clear, impact investors want to make money, and they actually very rarely lose money. But their
Sure.
focus is impact. So they want to see the change. They want to be part of that change, and they target it. But as I mentioned previously, you go around looking for these projects that you can invest in, and they simply don't exist. And yeah. Obviously that's or it's very difficult to take someone whose mentality is, I want to do it this way, and I'm not going to broker a change to the approach. I mean, what we've noticed through the Manufacturing African program is that, you know, clearly there's an appetite now for some where the links can be sort of, you know, pulled together. There are interested, you know, and certainly interested companies, and oftentimes it's these family-owned companies that have come into the next generation, the young generation. They've all been to school, you know, many Western educated. They understand what needs to happen, and they're willing to spend money to do so. And of course, investors want people who are willing to spend money, and that's their, you know, that's their USP. So, you know, so there is an appetite, and it's growing, but obviously it's not the same appetite as you find in the West.
Got it. Perfect. I appreciate you sharing those thoughts, Adrian. So we're out of time, but like Vidi was saying earlier, definitely enough content here, I think, for us to have another show on this. So I think that we need to have you back. and we can dive a little bit more into it, and maybe we can get into some more specifics. But Adrian, thanks for being here. Thanks for giving us your time.
Absolutely.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on.
And again, everyone, Adrian is with ESS. So go check them out. Check them out on their website. See what they're doing. Really cool stuff. Connect with Adrian and learn more. So, and Adrian, we'll have you again soon.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to it.
Always
Awesome.
a pleasure, Jason.
Always, Viddy. Always. And Adrian, it was great to meet you. And everyone, have a wonderful day. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.